Quei di Macerata.
Di Pollenza.
Ah, ok.
Adesso...
Dove stai Lorella? Stai a Pollenza? Cioè,
a casa,
esattamente.
perché con la quarantena ormai ognuno
A casa sua.
Ognuno a casa sua.
Lorella, vuoi dire ai partner la questione che li inviti a fare un saluto velocissimo?
All'inizio della...
Quando tu presenti la partnership.
Ah, ok.
Avverti adesso in modo...
Sì, va
tu
bene.
intanto, Roberto, se riesci a far partire il YouTube.
Ok, allora,
partito.
all
Ottimo.
the partners will be invited to make a short presentation when we name them in the partnership slide. So,
Quando tu presenti la partnership.
Yes. Ah, ok.
Avverti adesso in modo...
Sì, va bene.
Intanto, no, è qualcuno che sta sentendo YouTube che sente la mia voce indifferita, è quello che ho detto prima, non sto parlando adesso.
Ok. Partners will be invited to make a short presentation when we name them in the partnership.
Chiara, leva l'audio per favore, Chiara Laici.
Yes. Repetita Juvent. Quindi questo era l'audio di YouTube che ritornava con qualche secondo di ritardo.
Esatto.
Okay.
Io direi di incominciare.
Roberto, conduci tu, poi noi facciamo la presentazione, giusto?
Ma io davo solo queste notizie un po' più tecniche, poi vi lascio la parola.
Vai, Lorella.
Ovviamente le presentazioni per i partner molto brevi,
Certo.
dei partner molto brevi, quindi qualche parola giusto per dire chi siamo. Maybe I can start, so because I've been talking since the beginning, but I guess that not all the people here knows who I am. My name is Roberto Righi, and I work as a consultant for University of Macerata, who is the coordinator of the DEPIT project partner. And we can officially start, I guess, with Lorella Gianandrea presenting the project and all the partners. And as we just said, maybe we will give the floor just for 1 minute for each of the partners to say who they are and whose organization they belong.
Okay, thank you very much, Roberto. Then just a few words to explain that we prepared a short presentation in order to show what were the meaning and the basic ideas where we developed the project. So the first 3 or 4 slides were dedicated to the very beginning of the project, and then there is the presentation of the partnership. So I hope that you could be patient and listen to the first 2 or 3 slides, and then I give the floor to the partners for their presentation. I try to share my screen. Please tell me if everything is okay.
Ok.
Okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So the the title of our presentation will be Visible Design for Visible Learning, because the premise of the project, the landscape from where the project have the origin, is 2 main issues related to the situation of the schools and of the teacher. The first issue is related to the complexity of the classroom. Every day, teachers cope with different cultures, different pupils coming from different educational fields. And so there is a need for a different action in the class, which would be more situated and more related to the context. The second issue is the different relationship between formal and informal knowledge, because in the past, schools are used to focus on formal knowledge, and in the school, students and teachers are expected to construct formal knowledge. Now we know that students come to school with an informal set of knowledge coming from the internet, coming from the social, coming from the extra-scholastic ambient, and this kind of knowledge is very different from the one they had in the past, especially in respect to the symbolic codes that they were used to have in the school of the past. Another idea we want to focus is the need for an interactionist approach. This is an approach that Diana Laurillard developed in her last books. But the point is that we are trying to overcome the constructivist approach toward a more interactive approach. This project, born from experimentation. Since 2012, the University of Macerata has been experimenting a different design modality with different Italian schools from different levels, from kindergarten to secondary schools. In the experimentation, teachers try to rethink of the structure of the curriculum and of the class section using digital maps shared by the teacher with the students in a way that students can participate in the creation of the map and in the enrichment of the map itself. These maps used in this research were a representation of the design process carried on by the teacher. In the maps, you can see the activities developed in the classroom and their documentation made before the classroom activities and after the classroom activities. So the first prototype we developed was a lesson plan in using a tool to construct conceptual maps called View that looks like a map representing one lesson. You can see the date, lesson from 28th of March, and there was a structure developed in phase: presentation, discussion, task, group work, final presentation, and then debriefing, where the teacher and the students recall the material built and then give the homework and anticipate the work for the lesson of the day after. From these basic ideas, we started to think about a tool that could help the teacher during their design activities. We started from the need coming from the teacher, and the code work is sustainability. Teachers have big problems, but short time to design, and they need an app to have support in their design activities that could be easy to use and not time consuming. The other ideas is that teacher is at the same time a researcher and a designer. When the teacher designs his lessons, he could act as a practitioner, as a professionist, not only as a man or a woman who must apply something that another one has taught for him. If the teacher acts as a researcher and as a designer, he needs technologies who can help him or her. This technology must be designed for teaching and designed with the teacher, not for the teachers, because this is another problem, that usually teachers use technologies that are not thought for the teachers, but produced for other professionalism, and then reused in the classroom and in the school. And here we come to the DEPIT project. The University of Macerata promoted a European project called DEPIT, Designing for Personalization and Inclusion with Technologies, lasting for 3 years, and collect a group of different partners that have different roles and expertise. And now I call all the partners that are here and invite them to give a very short presentation of their institution. The first is the University College of London, and here we have Diana Laurillard that we thank for her presence.
Hello, thank you, Lorella. My role in university colleges, I act as Professor of Learning with Digital Technology in the UCL Knowledge Lab, which is all about using new media and digital technologies in the context of teaching and learning. And I've been working for some time on creating learning design tools for teachers. And that's how I think I first came to be in contact with Pier Giuseppe and also Pier Cesare and others who are now involved in the DEPIT project. And we discovered this joint interest in trying to support teachers by giving teachers their own kind of technology for being able to design the learning process they wanted. The closest we've got to that really is things like virtual learning environments like Moodle and things like that. But they really give you a bunch of tools, but not designed explicitly to help the teacher think about the learning process itself. And that's what I think brought us together. So I'm delighted to be part of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. The second partner.
Leva la condivisione.
Yes.
Lo schermo.
Sorry. The second partner is the Catholic University of Milan. If Alessandra.
Yes. Thank you, and hello to everyone. Yes, I represent Catholic University of Milan here, and especially the partner of the project, that is CREMIT Research Center. We are based in Milan Catholic University, and we are interested in the relationship between media and education, of course, innovation and education technologies. So we work with schools, as Lorella said, which is very important for us, not just for schools. And we promote and support research on the meaning of media, both in education, both in school, I mean, and also in the environment, as a family issues, for example, and a society issue. And we are really, really pleased to be part of this project and happy to be quite at the end of it for its meaning.
Thank you very much, Alessandra. The next partner is Juan de Pablo Pons from University of Seville.
Microfono, Juan.
Sorry. Thank you, Lorella. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it has been a stimulating project in its development with a satisfactory result, specifically the DEPIT app. We are working with positive data regarding the use of the tool by teachers. And very collaboration special for us with CEP of Seville, el Centro de Profesorado de Sevilla. And we also hope that in the dissemination phase of the project, still in progress, we will do a good job together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have also partners from the schools, and the next one would be Federica De Ganutti from Rete Propit of Pordenone. So please, Federica, if you are here.
Hello, good afternoon to everyone. I'm really happy to be here to represent a net of schools that are placed in the northeast of Italy. Actually, we are a group of teachers that were involved in this project from the beginning. And well, we were looking for a way to communicate with our kids in a different way. So we were trying to find and to collaborate in this project to find an app and to build an app that was sustainable for us and visible for our kids. Thanks very much to everyone.
Thank you, Federica. Another partner from a net of school in Marche region, Luca Mariani from Rete Crescendo from Marche.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm Luca Mariani. I'm from the Istituto Comprensivo Leopardi, which is in Grottammare, in the center of Italy, in the Marche. We are a network of 4 schools. We are from the center of Italy, and we worked at this project from the beginning, like Federica said. And we experimented the app in our classroom. I am a teacher of secondary school of math and science. And we are very happy that we could try this new and innovating app for our teaching planning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luca. Another net of school which worked in Spain, and we call Eduardo Rodriguez, the CEPD from Sevilla.
Hello, everybody. We work in CEPD Sevilla, teaching training. We have a lot of schools working with us about I don't remember now, but about 15,000 teachers, and we collaborate with the DEPIT project with 8 schools from primary school and secondary school. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Eduardo. Eduardo, sorry for the mistake. And we have also not only nets of schools, but also association of teachers in our partnership. And we have the head of AED, European Teacher Association, and I give the time to present to Professor Marseglia.
Vi saluto in italiano, un cordiale saluto come Presidente europeo della EDE. Dovrebbero essere collegati, la nostra sede è a Bruxelles, dovrebbero essere collegati con noi rappresentanti da Las Palmas de Gran Canaria, da Costanza, Varsavia, Stoccolma e Macedonia del Nord oggi, oltre a Laura Manni. Complimenti per l'impegno progettuale e per il rigore scientifico con cui è stato condotto il progetto. Noi della EDE ci impegneremo a diffonderlo ancora. Grazie.
Grazie, thank you very much.
A quick, quick translation for those who don't know Italian. Our friend Silvano is congratulating with all the partners for the project results, and he said that they have sections not only in Brussels, where the main site is, but also in the Canary Islands, Poland, Romania, and Macedonia, if I well understand. So we think that representatives should be here.
Thank you very much, Roberto. And last but not least, our technological partner, Paolo Omero, from sorry,
InfoFactory.
InfoFactory.
Hello, everyone.
Paolo.
Yes, we as InfoFactory, we are the company who helped the old team of the DEPIT project to develop this app. I hope that the app could be useful, and we are open for all your suggestions.
Thank you very much, Paolo.
Okay.
So I can go on with the presentation. I hope I not forget. Well.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, but
sorry, Lorella, just to say that we also have an important associated partner, which is ATE, the Association of Teacher Education in Europe. And I'm not sure if any representative from ATE is attending today, but they were an important partner also for the dissemination efforts that.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Yes, I don't know, but if there is someone from ATE, I will invite them to present also a greeting in the round table eventually, if they're not here now. Oh, thank you very much. I see in the chat someone is presenting. Okay. Perfect. I don't know if you can see my presentation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Well, the expected outcome of our project, as already said, is to build a graphic organizer, a learning environment to support teachers in the design of the curriculum and of the activities that could be carried on through a graphical structure, but that could be used not only for the teacher to design, but also with the students during the lessons. And the other expected outcome was to disseminate the model within teacher communities through teacher training, staff mobility, doing seminars, and preparing a MOOC that is running just in this period. Building a graphic organizer means for us to create something that could play a generative role. The maps should be not only a representation, but an aggregator of different elements. It should aggregate pedagogical indicators, but also materials used by the teachers, works made by students, and the app should be able to put together all these different elements. But the visualization should connect also different levels. As we can show after, there was a level regarding the curriculum, another sub-level regarding modules, and the third level regarding sessions that are different from lessons, but we can explain better in the next slide. This graphic organizer should foster inclusion and personalization, because if teacher could put in the map not only their design, but also the material that they will use in the lesson, it's easy to upload different kind of materials. So text, but not only textual materials, but also audio, video materials, and different tasks for different pupils, for different students. And in this way, you can design different learning paths between the same session of activities. As we said before, this app should be sustainable, easily used, and we suppose that teachers could use day by day this tool to design their lesson for the day after. Our project put its root in a theoretical background, and the main part of this theoretical background was taught by Diana Laurillard. So I invite Diana to take the microphone and to present the theoretical background coming from his book, Teaching as a Design Science.
Thank you, Lorella. Well, as I already explained, one of the things that brought some of these partners together was this clear sense that teachers are designers, and they're designers of the learning process, which is a complex process and constantly changing nowadays because of the opportunity to use digital tools. And yet teachers get very little support for being able to think through how this changes the way they think about pedagogy. So for me, the one kind of digital tool that we began developing was in a project called the Learning Designer. And this was developed as an online design tool for teachers, which enabled them to plan their lesson plan in a digital context, but also to share it with other teachers and to share ideas and build on each other's work and so on. However, that particular tool was only for teachers, and it created something like a visualized lesson plan. And you don't normally give a lesson plan to students. And what's so important about the DEPIT project is the insight that it's valuable for students to see that visualization of the learning process, which is what we will see as Lorella demonstrates it in later slides. But if you're going to develop a tool for teachers to design, then that has to have its origin in some kind of theoretical framework to guide that design, and it should be based on research in pedagogy. And that's what my work had been up to that point, was to develop something which I called the conversational framework for the teaching learning process, which, as Lorella said, is a kind of interactionist idea where you see in the diagram here, it's a representation of the framework. And it's about exchanges between the teacher on the left-hand side, the learner in the middle, and the learner with other learners, or their peer learners, on the right-hand side. And each of those actors in the learning process is operating at the level of concept in the top level and practice in the lower level. And all of those different kinds of exchanges which go on between those actors and between those two levels are the simplest way that I could summarize all the different findings in the literature, no matter whether it was constructivist learning, or it was didactic, or it was constructionist from Papert and people like that. This was the simplest way to define those different types of learning. And so one of the things that comes out of this is that you can, in that framework, you can identify 6 importantly different types of learning activity. The first one, acquisition, is of course very common in education because that's how the teacher explains to the student what there is to know. And we learn through reading, watching, and listening in learning through acquisition. But that's just that one direction, from the teacher's concepts to the learner's concepts. We also want learners to be active, so that that processing they do in listening to the teacher should then be followed up with them being able to ask questions of the teacher, to do a kind of inquiry or investigation of the teacher, or go to books and libraries with an intention to learn because they want to find out something. And nowadays, of course, to websites and the internet. So that's another kind, that cycle of learner asking questions of the teacher's concepts and directing their own learning that way is learning through inquiry. Then learning through practice, the teacher sets up an environment in which the learner is set a task, they try to act on that task to achieve the goal, and they find out from feedback how well they've defined that goal, how well they've met that goal. And sometimes they have to call in and recruit the conceptual understanding they have in order to improve that action. So learning through practice is very important for bringing the two things together, concept and skills, or concepts and practice. And then learning through discussion, the learner may be discussing with the teacher through an inquiry process or with learners, and they will debate with each other, argue with each other, discuss their conceptualizations and discuss at that sort of level. And that now is very common in small group teaching and tutorials and so on. Learning through collaboration is more complex because every learner is using a learning environment. But with collaboration, they're also sharing what they do in that environment with other learners. And also they're discussing what they're doing in the practice. So collaboration is quite a complex mix of all those other learning activities, but it's so important that it deserves its own learning type, I think. And then finally, learning through production is when the learner is asked to bring together all of those other things they've learned and present it to the teacher. It might be in an essay, or it could be a diagram, or it could be a program if they're programmers. It could be a performance. It depends on the kind of topic area. But learning through production is doing that extra bit to be able to say, so what have I learned and how do I represent it and articulate it? Now, those 6 learning types are now embedded in the DEPIT app to invite teachers to think about all those different ways in which teachers and learners interact through the learning process and try to get a balance of them. There's no rule about what that balance should be, but just to express that idea. And those are the ideas contained in the book that Lorella mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana. And let's move on. Oh, sorry. The next slide. Other 2 ideas forming our theoretical background. The first was visible design for visible learning. Web designers, architects are looking for the invisible design. They say that when the design is invisible, it is a sign that we are having a good design. But in our discourse, we want to stress that the design of the teacher should be visible, and students should share the design with the teacher. So we are looking for an app that could make the design of the teacher visible to product a visible learning, an enhancement in the learning of the students. Another stone in our theoretical background comes from the curriculum studies. In the last year, a lot of researchers studied about the construction of the curriculum and the research on the curriculum. We took from them the idea of the importance of the curriculum, of a complex view of the curriculum in the development of the design of the teachers and also in the school experience of the students. That's why in the prototype we started with the recognizing of 3 levels of visualization. The app allows students and teachers to move on various levels. There is the first levels, the levels of curriculum divided into modules. The second level was the view of the modules structured in different lessons. And the third modules structured in different activities. In the curriculum view, you can see the modules corresponding to a long period. It could be 1 year or 1 semester. Each module is made of sessions, and each module corresponds to a period of several weeks. Each work session is made of activities, and the duration is expressed in hours and minutes. For example, one section of project work could be from a few hours a week for 10 or 8 weeks, depending on the characteristics of the project. Here, there is a view that can allow you to see the structure of the app, but you can see it better at the end of the presentation. In the view that we call curriculum, you can see a tree structure representing the different modules in which the curriculum is developed. The second one is the view that show the different modules. The third is the view that show the lesson and the session. Inside each session, you can have the description of the activities. In fact, the concept of section, we use this word section instead of lesson, because a teacher may wish to design a work section structured in 3 parts: preparation, lesson, homework. So it's better to design together the whole sequence than to separate this session into 3 different lessons. Moreover, the lessons could be out of the class. It could be a trip to a museum or another kind of activities. So the term section is more flexible and allow to include a lot of quite different contexts for learning. When you see the box of the activities, you can click on the activities and then you can see the back side of the card. When you click a button, you can see this pop-up, and in this pop-up you can find a lot of information about the activities. The title, the learning type, the type of activities, the work organization as a single work or a group work, the description of the task to do, the keywords about the topics, the objective, the competencies that the teacher is addressing, and 2 empty fields where teachers could put initial notes and final notes. And finally, the links to the materials that the students could use in the class. Other features of the app are that it is usable both online and offline. The materials could be uploaded on the cloud and then inserted in the different activities, and they could be also reused in different activities if the teacher needs them. And all the materials are visualized as clickable icons, so they can be enlarged and they could be used also on the interactive whiteboard and used during the work in class. So the design is made flexible to use on the teacher's own device, but also to be used in the classroom on the interactive whiteboard. Now I invite Professor Rossi to show us a quick tour of the DEPIT app in order to show online directly the functionality and the utilization of the app. I stop my share and then please, Professor Rossi, you can share your screen.
Thank you, Lorella. I describe very fast the app. this is my course, my university course, but it's possible, it's same to other level. I have a theoretical lesson, and I click here. I have the modules of my courses, 3 months courses. If I click in the modules, I have the lesson of the first modules, and if I click in the first lesson, I have my first lesson, and this is a teacher learning activities, introduction, analysis, a bridge. Have also the link to questionnaire. The DEPIT app is also an aggregator of not only of the activities, but also the materials created by teacher, but also by student during the work. In the past, the design is before the activities. The app is possible to use the app during the lesson, and is the documentation after the lesson, after the session, about the work. If about in each card, as Lorella describes, we have the possibility to find the link to materials. If we go in author mode, we show in the line in the line the type of learning, as Diana said before, with a different color. It's possible to see if the activities, all activities present, and is balanced the activities same. If I want to add another activities, is very fast, very easy by drag and drop, and I can write all element. Sicuramente, sure, is not mandatory to enter all the form, but depend of the necessity of a teacher. I would like very fast results about the project. For teacher, we have many focus group, and the teacher said greater awareness of interplanning have acquired about after use of a DEPIT, greater awareness of planning, especially in the organization of the times, to bring together macro and the micro design, to return to existing path, and recover contents and material from previous session.
Giuseppe, would you like to share the slides?
Non si vedono?
No, we are seeing the maps.
Ok, allora prova a stoppare e rilanciare. Perché io le vedo invece. Adesso?
Yes.
Thank you. I speak about the results. In particular, many teachers said they used the DEPIT in complex activity, for example, in interdisciplinary learning, when it's important to coordinate several teachers work together. For students, facilitates orientation, thanks to the possibility of inserting materials produced in the context by students and teachers, makes the construction of knowledge more situated and involving, promotes the management of attention and children, especially in students with difficulties, facilitates inclusion as different kinds of tasks are included in the same map, allows customization by possibility of inserting parallel path. But in particular, I think is very important, the last, students have a global vision of the path and they understand its meaning, global meaning of a path. This is, I think, is very interesting results of the project. Teachers now modifying their design, and in their practice, they often use this pattern: initial input provocation, after student activities, and final debriefing. DEPIT promote great awareness and and the explicitation of a pattern actually used. Macro design. In the past, there was a linear link from macro and micro. Today, this scheme no longer works because the micro shows the interviewing of multiple threads, disciplinary, inter, and intrapersonal. Macro design is competence, epistemology, aims. Micro is action, context, interviewing of a multiple dimension. Teacher perceive the uselessness of the old model, but we still don't have a suitable theoretical models. We have found interesting suggestion by generative curriculum, and we think the use of a map instead of table makes the relationship between macro and the micro more liquid, flexible, and less deterministic. It's possible to pass in the next moment of the seminar. Lorella?
Thank you very much, Pier Giuseppe. If you... Ok.
Darei la parola subito.
Sorry. And we can go on and give the floor to our guest, Enilda Romero Hall from University of Tampa, United States. Thank you, Enilda, for being with us and giving us your point of view about our work, our project, and our app.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Wonderful. Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Well, good morning from myself. It's 10 o'clock where I am. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for the DEPIT project team for inviting me to evaluate and to look at the DEPIT app. Honestly, I was extremely impressed. And I wrote down some of my thoughts and I'll be sharing them with you. So my name is Enilda Romero Hall, and I am an associate professor at the University of Tampa, and I'm also the graduate coordinator for the Instructional Design and Technology program. So I teach graduate students in instructional design about design and technology. Thank you again for having me today. So the aim of the project, the DEPIT project, was to rethink educational design and propose the hypothesis of an implicit and visible planning process, right? And this was to be presented in the classroom with the learners and to have the students really as mediators in this kind of learning process. And I thought that was fascinating. This is drawn to the application that aims to support teachers in the design, and it is a working tools for students in the classroom. I approached my evaluation of the DEPIT app from the perspective of myself as a learning experience designer and also as well as an instructor. And I looked at it from 3 different components. So I looked at it at the environment. I also looked at the elements of motivation for the learner. And last but not least, I looked at it from the usability within the application. And I will address all three of these elements of the evaluation. So from the environment perspective, the DEPIT allowed me to very quickly gain a sense of the mapping functionality of the system. So here, as you can see on the screen, you have the different modalities used. So as Lorella and Pier Giuseppe already mentioned, you have the three list view, and then you have the mapping layout. And as a first-time user, I gained access to understanding how to use the app through the video tutorial that was contained on the MOOC. And it very easily explained how to navigate the application and creating the different, the curriculum, including the modules, the lessons, and the activities. I think we have another guest. So my analysis of the environment includes this 5 different elements. As an instructor, I see the value of the DEPIT app for collaboration, which were already mentioned by Diana as an integral part of the theoretical background, right? So from the collaboration, it just gives you the ability to share files with others, which is kind of like we're seeing right now in terms of technology tools that we're using not only in K-12 environment, but we are also using this in everyday kind of work environments. It's important, the ability to share and collaborate. The environment also allows for teaching and learning about design thinking. Again, going back to some of the theoretical background mentioned in the previous presentations. So the teachers are not only able to design their curriculum, but they are also able to design to share their design process with their students, increasing that design thinking process. The environment also allows for the integration of ICT in the learning process. One of the things that I really enjoy about the app was that it allowed for self-containment within the lesson, well, within the entire module, really. I thought it was really beneficial when the instructor can add different links, they can add different document formats, and everything is kind of self-contained, because I know for teachers and myself as an instructor, we are always struggling to have everything in one place. I'm teaching a course right now. It's an online course, and it's really important for me, for my students to be able to access a module and they feel that they understand the mapping of that module. So I thought that ability to have ICT within the modules was extremely beneficial. Another part of the environment that I thought was critical was the use of personalization of instruction. So learners are able to, sorry, I kind of lost my file. Learners are able to personalize the activities that they have. So there are, the instructor is able to change and modify the activity time, the level of complexity of the activity, and the order in which the activities are set for specific learners. So again, allowing for more personalization. We know as instructors that not all learners move at the same pace within an instructional environment. So that level of personalization is extremely beneficial. And as an teacher educator, another element of the environment that was extremely valuable was the ability to align the instruction with the specific standards. from an accreditation point of view, presenting a curriculum with alignment of standards already embedded is extremely beneficial. Okay, in terms of motivation, I evaluated the presentations completed in previous workshops, the previous online workshops, and it shows a clear success of the use of the application by learners in various settings. But more specifically for my evaluation, I looked at the DEPIT app, focused on John Keller's motivation model, and I was able to find elements of attention, relevance, and confidence. So let me. So from an attention point of view, the idea of visualizing the design of an instructional map with modules, lessons, and activities serves to increase the learner's personal and situational interest, because the learner is able to see the type of inquiry that will be happening during the environment, and how this inquiry or content that will be shared is going to be of interest on them. So it therefore increases their motivation. Another element is the element of relevance. Through the visible planning process, the learner can become easier at explaining why and how the content helps the learner, right? So there can be a sense of perceived usefulness. In other words, the content, how the content that is presented today to the learner will be beneficial today, tomorrow, in the future. It also, the layout and visibility of the DEPIT app allows for familiarity. So learners can see the design of the instruction, and they can link the content that they previously learned and link it to the new content that they are going to learn. So if you are in grade 7 and you learn some content related to math, then you can understand how that content that you learn in grade 7 is now going to be familiar to you and connected to content that you're going to be learning in grade 8, for example. Last, for the motivation, the design of the DEPIT can help increase the learner's confidence, right? To the transparency of the learning requirements. And I'm going to go to the next slide to kind of show. So I play a little bit around with the app and just mapping some of my own content for learner motivation. And if you are able to get access to the app, you can see, you can click in the corner as Pier Giuseppe mentioned, and you get to see, for example, what are some keywords related to a specific lesson, what are the goals that the instructor has, and that can allow the learner to, again, gain some self-control, because they will understand that their success does not rely on external factors. Their success is connected to the goals that the instructor hopes that they achieve. There's also competencies, which is something that I've mentioned before, which I think is critical. Okay, so moving on to the usability of the app. So as I mentioned before, one of the things that I did in order to become familiar with the app is that I used the external video tutorial to get a sense of the navigation, and I felt very oriented. As a first-time user, the tutorial was hosted in the MOOC, and it was very very straightforward and very easy to use. And it just showed me that the interface was very user-friendly. However, I think that in order to have a wider dissemination of the app and to increase use, it is important for the app to be self-contained. And in order for the app to be self-contained, one of the things that I think would be interesting to consider for the application is to have a quick introductory either video or animation. I explain. Today, when we enter an application in our phones or in our web browser, we are often, as user, prompted to complete a tutorial of the interface. This can be something that is pre-recorded. So when you enter the application, you are presented with a video and you have the option of viewing the video or skipping the video. There are also interactive tutorials in which, as the example that you see here on your screen, you are taken to different parts of the interface and giving the option to learn more about the different buttons. So I thought that that would be an interesting element to consider for the app, the idea of having either a tutorial or an interactive guide for the interface in order to make the DEPIT app a little bit more self-contained. Another aspect of the application that I thought could enhance for improvement and clarity was the idea of a help button or a definitions section or a frequently asked section. And the only reason I mentioned this is because when I got to the part where I was trying to link all of my activities together, I was struggling to see how much time the activities will take. And I started searching for a help button. So that's what prompted me to this suggestion. And one last recommendation, and I don't know the capabilities of the app, of the development, if it would allow for it, is this idea of live collaboration. For example, when we go and just thinking of a different tool, a random tool, like in Google Live, when you have the ability to collaborate together, and I'm not only thinking about collaboration between the teacher and the instructor, but it would be interesting to have different kind of pairs, like instructor to instructor, as well as student to student. That would be a really interesting way to enhance the app. So at the macro level, I see the DEPIT app as a tool that facilitates collaboration. It facilitates openness and transparency. Often teachers and administrators have to figure out systems that allow accrediting bodies to see the use of standards and how the standards are organized through the curriculum. And the DEPIT app makes it easier to embed standards in every layer of the instruction. It gives flexibility, allowing instructors and students to see the mapping and the alignment within the design, which I think is connected back to a certain level of motivation. Again, this sense of openness and transparency could also be beneficial for interdisciplinary design efforts. And at the micro level, I see the DEPIT app increasing efficiency and engagement in the instruction. The students look at the design process of the teachers and they feel oriented. I can see this as a tool in which the learners feels part of the instruction and perhaps customizes their learning experience. Again, we all know that not all learners move through the instruction at the same pace. Therefore, having the ability to personalize and customize instruction is just something that will be beneficial to the learners. Thank you. I hope my evaluation has provided some insights, but I just wanted to, again, thank very much the DEPIT project team for allowing me to be part of this process. And I just want to honestly say this is something that I had not seen before. And I just want to congratulate you. Although there are enhancements that can be done, there always are enhancements. It truly was something that I thought was taught for the teachers and for the learners. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nilda. Thank you for your very useful tips and consideration, but also for your commitment to start using the app and also viewing the MOOC and all the materials. So thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now it's the time of Professor Pekka Rasanen from University of Jyväskylä, Finland.
Okay, now the voice is on. Do you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Sorry for my pronunciation of your university. I'm sure it's wrong.
Don't worry, don't worry. Actually, I'm trying to find, how can I share my screen so that I can hear. Okay, can you see my
Perfectly, yes.
presentation slides? This is not okay. I need to move that a little bit to, okay, is it now full screen? Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
okay,
very well.
So thank you very much for inviting me to look at the app. And I took a little bit different approach. I did a rather male approach to the application. I downloaded it and with the ideology of that manuals are for losers, I started just using it without knowing anything about the app, and I did find it very easy to start with. And actually I did a very concrete process that I tried to model a math assessment battery using that. So math assessment battery, which has this some sort of a curriculum inside it, and it has modules and parts, and it has certain activities, and activities are individual items of assessment. And even in this kind of a work, I can see that how it helps to visualize for yourself and for your colleagues the structure of what we are aiming to do. So it's a very, very useful tool for that. But then in this presentation, I actually took a totally different approach of discussing and paying attention, and I because the title of your project is designed for personalization and inclusion with technology, and I'm trying to explain why I'm talking about this, because I have my background gives three perspectives. That I have nothing to do with education in a classroom. I've never done it, and knowing much about it, I never want to do it because it's an impossible job. But my perspective, actually, first of all, I've been a researcher for 30 years on learning disorders. So I've been looking at the question of the education in school from the perspective of learning disability researcher. Secondly, I work as a clinical neuropsychologist with the children who are struggling with learning. And third, I'm working on developing electronic tools to help kids to learn better, and this kind of technologies, so the future technologies, how we can actually personalize the education for within classrooms or individually. And this is my perspective. And I just took a couple of things from the system, and this is not critics about the current system, but I'm presenting you ideas which you should consider, or I think would be useful to consider when developing the next versions of the app. It definitely needs to be developed further. And I went through, I didn't go through the manual because I didn't need the manual. It was easy to use app, but I did go through the presentations what the teachers were giving, and there actually there are key ideas behind what the teachers really want to do, and it is our ideal future that learning adapts to each child. So this is very demanding dream that actually every child would have their some sort of an own curriculum. And then the other question there in those presentations which were presented on 26th, there was that, is it possible to program realistically? It's possible to really make a plan for a diverse classroom? And these are very important questions, because let's talk a little bit about the diversity in the classroom. And I'll show you just a couple of examples from the research point of view, not from the inside classroom, but outside classroom view about the diversity in education. So this is an example of a data we collected or have been collecting for years. Almost 2,000 school kids have been followed from the first grade. And here you can see that starting from the first grade to the fourth grade, these are standard scores of very, very basic, simple arithmetic test. And so standard scores for the arithmetic test from first to fourth. So it's basically the same test, and how the diversity happens. And if you look at the orange line there, it tells that in the classrooms there are kids who are lacking more and more behind the others. And even though at the beginning of the school they are all starting with the same curriculum, and actually the orange group are in 4 years they are already 2 years behind the curriculum. And just in 4 years, some of the kids are out of the whole idea of the curriculum. They are, and this is about 6% of the kids in our sample. So meaning that the diversity in a classroom actually is a changing thing. And this should be taken into account when we're planning a system where we are looking personalization of the curriculum within a classroom, actually that the diversity in classroom changes all the time. So that any planning system should be more dynamic. In many ways, the model is a little bit static. Another example about the extremes of curriculum planning. So here's an example of another data set, or actually this is 4 different data sets put into one scale. So we have same subtraction tasks with measured in the large groups in four different countries. And here I did put the scale to be the Finland scale. So the scale is Finland. And then I look at the countries like Ethiopian kids, Mexican kids, Zambian kids. We have a large sample from Zambia, for example. We have 2,500 kids from all around the country. And now we are looking those in the same scale, and we can see that from the Finnish perspective, the Zambian kids are actually outliers. But if we would model using, for example, this DEPIT app, the curriculum aims and what the curriculums contain, we would clearly see that the actually the Zambian or Mexican or Ethiopian curriculums are much more demanding than the Finnish curriculum. So the modules and all the contents are at least 1 year ahead in those curriculums, but the children in the classroom actually are living in a totally different reality. So modeling the curriculum is one thing, and the other one is what is really the learning reality within the classroom. So when you're building an app, the app should not only be a tool for describing the curriculum and the aims of the education, so the normative aims of the education, but it should reflect also the reality, what is happening in the classroom and in learning. And one other aspect is the level of difficulty of the tasks in the system, how to describe the difficulty level, how to describe what the kids are asked to do. And at the moment, it has these 3 dots describing what the teachers can define, and whether it's easy task or intermediate or hard level. But we have a dilemma also in the level of difficulty definition. So that if we have just a cross-sectional study that is at one time point we are measuring a homogeneous group, we can actually say whether the task is at group level, whether it is difficult, easy, or hard. Or if we look at a certain precise moment the kids doing the curriculum, we could actually try to estimate that on average this is a hard task or this is an intermediate or easy task. But if we are talking about personalization and we take a focus on the diversity, actually we can see that the difficulty of a task or item is different for each child. And this kind of philosophy should be implemented into the system, that actually the difficulty is a variable which varies according to each child. And not to make it too easy to design or plan, actually we also see that when the child is learning, this same task changes from easy task or hard task to an easy task, or sometimes it changes only a little, and this information is very important for the teacher when they're trying to personalize the education. So when we put a focus on diversity or on learning, see, actually we can see that the difficulty is a situation-dependent variable. And any system which is trying to build up a tool for teachers to plan the education in a diverse classroom, it should take this rather self-evident fact into account to promote thinking that how this the real world in the classroom is reflected in this application. So this dilemma is how to work with this kind of a thing, that teacher is predefining something and my suggestion is actually that you start thinking about feedback. I'm using the word feedback here and not like evaluation, like very common way of trying to find whether something is a hard item or easy item would be connected to some sort of a teacher evaluation or exam. I prefer the idea of feedback, because feedback is something what the students are also giving to the learning system. So it's more systematic system. Oh, we have a nice dancer yeah. So that you should start to think that how actually you can collect some information within the system that it can start to adapt. And when we talk about feedback, I'm talking about all kinds of information. And here's just an example for you, because, presenting this one article. Why I want you to look at this article is because this is 2007 already published, but because we are actually presenting some sort of trying to grasp the complexity of the idea of what kind of feedback there can be. So that feedback can function to multiple directions. It's also connected to the interactions within the application. But looking at this question of how to get the application to react to the what happens in the classroom. And then also the next level of thinking is that, okay, feedback is not only a static system, but feedback is also, and it needs to be adaptive. And when we look at the feedback itself, that we look at the adaptation itself. So that we have different. So if I look at the current application, it has features of adapted system. So where the developer or the teacher can define things, you have some aspects of adaptable system, which is where the user can do something, but then to be really adaptive, actually, you should connect it to some sort of an intelligent system, which can help to bring the real personalization. So it doesn't have to be this application itself, but it could be some sort of an interface to connect it to something. And a really adaptive system actually is trying to collect some information from various sources. So it can include observing user interactions, or it can be using or explicitly ask the students that, okay, how did you find the task? That the students could always give feedback about the activities they were doing and how they felt they were doing. And the system should be able to collect this information about the user interactions with the system. So if the child, I'm now talking as a clinical neuropsychologist, is concerned that the teachers do not get enough information within the inclusive classroom, that some children actually are struggling with most of the tasks, and I didn't really understand the task itself, or I couldn't participate in this group activity. And this kind of system, what you have built, actually would help the students to give feedback about their experiences in the classroom. And when we talk about adaptive learning systems, we also have to look at what can be adapted in this system. And as a simple model of we can say that there are 3 different models how to adapt, and actually if you think about an ideal teacher, a super class the teacher who is able to really work with the kids, and you are giving the teacher the best possible opportunity to teach, which means that the teacher is able to teach with one child only. And what does a teacher really do in this kind of system? The teacher is extremely adaptive. First of all, the teacher has some sort of a content model inside her head, or actually the teacher may have this DEPIT app as describing the contents of the curriculum, and the teacher selects from this what the contents which are suitable for this child. And this is something what you already have in your system, that you can actually do this kind of a content adaptation. But the second actually is that the teacher's behavior actually is changing, and in this system level, it means that the feedback what the system gives to the child when the child is doing something within the system reacts differently on the basis of what the child is doing and who is the child. And if we go further away, we can actually start, and if the system collects data of the child's performance, the system can actually start to build up a picture at what kind of child we have here. And we can see that when the tasks are like this, the child is behaving like this and seems to be successful. But in this kind of activities, actually, the child fails, or the child loses motivation. And based on that, the teacher can adapt the learning path for the child. So making not only the curriculum visible, but making what really happens in the classroom visible is the required to make personalization within inclusion. So how the DEPIT model supports a personalized and inclusive learning? Definitely extremely well at multiple levels, multiple ways. I can see the DEPIT model as a great tool, for example, for comparative research for curriculums and educational practices, and that way it can the researchers and the teachers can collaborate in redefining the curriculum and others. But it could do better if in the next version. So this is definitely you need to apply for a new project, and I think it has to accept some sort of a data to generate some sort of feedback to both the teacher direction and the direction of the children. And it's very important that you keep the philosophy of visualization. The feedback must be visualized. And maybe even this, maybe it's not the version 2.0, maybe it's the 3.0 version, where actually this data, this feedback, what is collected, helps automatically, or with artificial intelligence, or with the intelligence of the teachers. It uses to adapt the paths of learning and the modes of feedback, what you're giving individuals. And this might happen even in more or less in real time in the future. Okay, this may sound a little bit futuristic ideas for you, but actually maybe not. These are not really today, these are not so futuristic ideas, because I can tell you, among many others, we are also building adaptive systems like this, which actually is offering children tasks, it's collecting the feedback, and these systems are actually trying to personalize the learning experience. And we've been doing this for a long time. And at the moment, almost half of the Finnish schools are already using our systems as part of the education. And we are, during this Corona time, we were collecting about 300 million data points from the school children's performance per month. So we have a huge amount of data which can be used, but actually, if we would be able to connect this kind of feedback from the students to models or ways how you are actually visualizing the paths of learning, I think that would be even more powerful system. I hope I gave you some ideas and new heuristics how to approach the question when we're talking about diversity, task difficulty, and especially personalization and inclusion with technologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your futuristic view, and also for your hints that we could surely use in the future. Also, the idea to apply for a new project is is interesting, and we will for sure we will take it in account. But we also will have worked in the past on an intelligent tutoring system in another European project. So why do not put together these two lines of research? Because it's very interesting. Also the idea to collect data, visualize feedback, and then reuse the data to adapt the learning path. It's actually the way we are looking to the future. So it's very, very interesting for us. Thank you very much, really. And now I give the floor to the third expert, that is Maria Ranieri from University of Florence. So please, Maria, thank you very much for being with us.
Yes, well, good evening. I try to share my slides. Okay. Okay, can you see them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Well, let me say thank you very much for this opportunity to share with colleagues, schools, working on designing with technology, with digital tools in the perspective of innovating pedagogies and making them more suitable for our world is changing, particularly these days, I would say. Well, I'm Maria Ranieri. I'm associate professor at the University of Florence, where I teach educational technology. I've been involved in several European projects, so I feel really in my shoes today. So I like working in international context because we can compare and share perspectives on curriculum, schools, education, differently from PECCA. My focus is on instruction and education specifically. I have to say that after having viewed the presentation by Enilda and Pekka, I decided to reshape a bit my presentation in order to avoid somehow repeating stuff. And so I decided to concentrate my presentation on the main ideas that I was impressed by the project, even because apart from the app, I read, I went through the reports. I was really interested in catching the point of view of the teachers involved in the project. I've watched the video presentation that have been made some days ago by the teachers. So I try to give you to share with you some reflections as I've written in this first slide on the project, the DEPIT project, and maybe some considerations that I will share with you could be hopefully useful for the project development. Well, so some keywords that I was particularly impressed by. The first keyword, complexity. I think that the DEPIT project is really taking to tackle the issue of complexity in a world where just transmitting content is not anymore, suitable for making children able to face the several challenges that the world is raising. Even the last, emergency, I'm referring to the COVID-19, is showing how living in a society today is really becoming prepared to tackle with complexity, which means to me that we cannot be happy to just receive content, but we need to prepare children to reflect on content. So we need to promote, develop more complex skills in terms of cognitive postures, in terms of cognitive behaviors. so complexity, but also I think the project clearly faced the challenge of finding a bridge between formal and informal settings of learning. I will go back on this issue later, but basically it's also linked to the choice that the project has made to design and develop an app. They could have been interested in developing other type of digital artifact, but they actually have chosen to work on an app. And I think this makes sense to me, and I will go back on this point later, as I said. Another idea, which is relatively new, I know, is the idea of teacher as designers. I said this is not new because we started hearing about that since 2010. But at the same time, this is not a common idea yet. So promoting among teachers the idea that they're not just transmitter of contents, but designer of learning scenarios, learning paths, I think it's crucial, and is really moving the focus of the profession of teachers from just taking the stuff and delivering it to rethinking the stuff itself that must be delivered. And of course, personalization. This is another keyword of the project that still helps to face the challenges that the changing world is raising for schools and teachers and students and families as well, because personalization means that somehow learning is entering the houses as well. And this you maybe can also call into question the role of teachers. Why not? The teacher, parents, why not? And the family. And while using digital tools to plan teaching and to manage the teaching process, of course, we are also documenting. So this is another keyword that I found important, relevant. Document what? Non-linear path of design. The idea that also Pier Giuseppe has shown before through the example is that we are not planning just designing just a curriculum in the old meaning we know, which is basically a line, but we are creating, generating an iterative process of learning and teaching. Another idea I think it's really interesting to reflect on is the one of aggregation. And I've interpreted my role today as something like a discussant. So this is one idea. I would like to go back later through the discussion. Aggregation, it could be understood as a shift of paradigm in the way how we see the process of developing knowledge. Till some years ago, we have heard some colleagues, for example, Siemens, saying that knowing is more and more networking rather than acquiring knowledge. Somehow, this word aggregation makes me thinking that maybe we are moving from networking to aggregating. It's a question that from a theoretical point of view, I would like to discuss with you. And also the idea of reusing, which is of course linked to the digital format we are using for designing and supporting learning. And of course, last but not least, students' involvement in this process, which is linked to the personalization, of course, approach, and which is, as Diana underlined, probably the main novelty of DEPIT, because we have heard talking about learning design and digital tools usable to support teachers to visualize the process of designing and teaching. since 2010. But through DEPIT, I see that something new is emerging from their approach, precisely because even the students are made part of the visualization process, maybe more than another projects that I've seen or tools. And here, it's from my point of view, probably one of the main issues that we should discuss and probably take as a starting point to also see possible developments of the app, students' involvement in particular, and somehow this is also linked to what Pekka said before. I'm wondering, insofar as the students' involvement in the visualization process is one of the main novelty, the added value of this tool, probably we can go deeper in the understanding of the impact of the use of such a kind of tools on self-regulation processes. Maybe one word that I've missed while reading reports or looking at presentation is self-regulation. Probably it's my fault, I'm sure, but I like hearing something about it from project partners. I mean, there are also triggering sentences supporting students to reflect on the different type of thinking process involved in the use of the app. And so I'm wondering whether the DEPIT project could go deeper in measuring somehow or assessing or evaluating how the use of such a kind of tools with students may improve self-regulation. Self-regulation, I think today is crucial, because the more the curriculum is open, the more the school is open to informal settings of learning, the more we need to deconstruct and build the curriculum on the basis of an interactive process. The more we open the curriculum, the more we need that students are able to self-regulate the learning process. And I particularly see the role of graphic organizer from this point of view. Graphic organizer are, and we know the use of map, conceptual map, mental map, etc. We know that they have may play an important role in helping students self-regulate their learning activity, their learning processes, which is pivotal today to support the shift from a school based on transmission of content to a school based on building competencies and skills. So one issue I would like to discuss with you. So it's just a comment to raise for us a question for discussion. One issue is precisely self-regulation. And another concept which I find interesting, and that the reading of your reports, theoretical frameworks, keywords, and so on inspired me, it was the word aggregation. I think it's a very inspiring word because more and more we are living in a big data world with several contents. Everywhere we are somehow around us, there are several information, data. So actually we are living in a world providing several information. The word itself and its life itself, the word itself is becoming is increasingly becoming a curriculum. It's like an intellectualization of the word. So I would also share with you some reflection on the relationship between this idea of knowing through aggregation, because I see in this app a kind of approach supporting, maybe paradigm is too much, but the idea of knowing through aggregation and the selection of an artifact like an app, which is basically a mobile tool. We have spoken of students in the school, but actually the app is conceived to be used to a mobile phone, which is a mobile devices which can be used in school, out of school, at home, so in several places. So maybe we can also develop a bit more deeply the relationship between the specific digital tools that have been developed, the concept of aggregation, and the idea of linking formal and informal setting of learning. So these two ideas, so the impact of self-regulation and the concept of aggregation, together with the decision to go to adopt, to develop an app, I think can be furtherly explored in terms of theoretical and also methodological point of view. And as a last point, I don't have a slide for this last point, but it's the same. The last point I want to share with you in terms of relevance and discussion and reflection is that this kind of tools can be of great importance in terms of also teacher professional development, as we know. I mean, we are talking about collaboration, not only among children, but also among teachers. For example, I've seen a presentation that has been given by one of the teachers involved in the project 3 days ago. And I was particularly impressed by the way how the teacher underlined the collaboration at the level of teachers and students. And at this purpose, my question is, what could be the relationship between the idea of developing a community of teachers on one side, and on the other side, adopting technologies and devices that are increasingly individualized tools. So how to put together the idea of community and individualization of professional development, of learning, of training. So there's like a tension, but maybe it's someone have talked some years ago of networked individualism, and maybe we can be inspired by this type of formula to design the future of teachers' professional development. But I think that we should also reflect on it. I mean, we are using tools that are increasingly oriented to individuals, and app and stuff like this are clearly individualized devices. And but on the other side, we need to share practices, to share discourses, to share behaviors, to share languages and discourses. So I think that your project really is inspiring for the several issues that rise and tackle, and somehow is remaking, relaunching, I think, the debate on teacher training, basically, and what is the object of training, what is the way of training, and what is the impact of this way of preparing teacher on the way how the classroom and the classroom with the word linked to the word is managed. So thank you very much. Really, I hope that these considerations could be useful to relaunch and restart the discussion about your future projects. Thank you very much again for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, for your interesting consideration about our project that allow us to think forward, also on how to develop your ideas about collaboration within teachers, about the different paradigms from aggregation and the orientation. So your ideas could be very stimulating for us and for the next coming roundtable. So we thanks Maria and Enilda and Pekka for their ideas and for sharing with us their ideas about the project and about the app. But now we pass to the third moment of this workshop, inviting people to discuss the ideas we have already here, and to put some questions if they want, using the chat if they want, or interviewing in voice if they have the microphone. So I know that there are some intervention. I collect the first question from Juan de Pablos for Maria about the use of technology. Juan, if you want, you can put your questions live. Otherwise, I can read your question.
Yes, it's a question really for three invited, but it's possible for Maria, I think, your opinion about the actual situation, the current pandemic, formula is in actuality about technology as an option and technology as obligation for the current pandemic. And what is your opinion about this question or situation or idea?
Lorella, you think would you like to collect some questions before and then give the word to the different experts, or you prefer?
But I think you can answer while we are collecting questions, because for now there are not pending questions in the chat. So I think that you can start answering these questions and then we can move on another question. So please.
Okay, thank you, Lorella. Of course, it's a quick answer, because I hope other experts would like joining this conversation. If I should shape the issue, I would highlight on one side opportunities, on the other side risks, of course. From the side of the risks, there are two main risks from my point of view in this period, precisely in this period. One risk is that there are children who don't have equipment, so there's a risk of digital divide, and we have discussed about it in several situations. Then there is another risk, which is something like a digital overload, in the sense that we are not we are not, used to work at home, us as teachers and students as learners. So I'm not sure we're able to manage our time and all the stuff that we have to do with technologies. But there are also opportunities that I see. And for example, precisely a project like DEPIT can inspire us, because a mobile phone is an app is delivered to a mobile phone, which is something that, being mobile, is not precisely linked to a specific space. I mean, while a traditional whiteboard can be just used, I mean, in a room, in a classroom, we are talking about tools that are not, born to be in a classroom. So since school is not just a classroom, this is an idea that I really, I really sustain. What is a class? What is the school? Is just a classroom? I don't think so. So I see that several resources can be orchestrated, and a mobile device can be the means through which the different resources can be orchestrated, including the learning resources. So from our point of view, we have to frame the role of technologies in terms of risks and opportunities as well. But there are the double sides that we cannot avoid to take into consideration. But in terms of opportunity, I think that really the mobility is an affordance, especially in periods like we are living now. They have several pedagogical affordance for because they allow to bridge context and settings and resources. This is the idea that DEPIT, I think, also includes somehow in its inspiration.
Thank you very much, Maria. I have a questions for Federica, because moving from the words of Enilda that said that each child has his own times, and moving from the reflection from Pekka that said us that personalization is a key issue in the use of the app, I would like to ask them how to manage to personalize learning, paying attention to different times during the lessons and different span of attention of the different students. How do they use the app, and how they find the app useful to manage this issue, to manage these questions?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. Well, actually, I'm speaking like teacher in a primary school. So the range of age of our kids is from 6 up to 10 years old. That means that they are quite young, actually. I can just give you some brief observation that I collected working in this group of teachers while we were using the app. First of all, I want to let you know that while we were using DEPIT app during our lessons at school, we could notice how visualize the path that we were going to do with the kids for the youngest was really helpful, because they could just get the meaning of an image and they could understand, for example, how long the activity will take, or how many activities they had to do with us before having their break. That was something that helped them to feel a little bit less anxious, and that there is something that helped also them to get some routine, which was really good with the younger. Then we noticed that the map, how we use this DEPIT application is changing while the kids are growing up, because we need different ways of let them visualize and let them participate to their path. So they grow with us and we grow with them, actually. There is, a big job behind all of this, but I think that that give us the chance to recognize the different kind of, the different way in which our students can learn. And in the same path, in the same map, we can put inside the different element for different students. This is personalization, and everyone can see and listen and recognize that they are included in. So this is my first short answer. I want to just, if I can, add little things about what we were talking before about technologies. And in my personal opinion, I really think that technologies can be really good and really bad on the other side. I mean, there are two faces of the same coin. I agree with that. But on the other way, I really think that this app or the technologies is like a book. I mean, if I read a book, I can spend the whole afternoon by myself without socialization. If I use my laptop, it's the same, actually. So I really believe that the link between this app, like all the tools that we have online for education, and the kids is the teacher. I mean, is the way of the teacher of presenting and using the app that can let us move on the perfect ground of integration, because human beings staying together, growing and doing things together in present, and now like in this period of emergency in our rooms. But without a good teacher that can use and sustain the technologies and understand what is the project behind, I really truly think that technology is nothing. And I completely agree that it keeps you out of the real world. So I think that this is something that we, like teachers, need to develop our consciousness of what technology is, and also our I'm sorry, I'm missing the word. We have to be smarter, we need to learn about technologies, and we need to learn not only how we can use that, but which is the project that is behind. That allows us to be a good teacher and understand also the different paths and design them visible with our kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Federica.
Add something to this discussion about this technology and education and COVID time and some experiences what we have had. And during this COVID time when the schools were closed, we actually realized the importance of the role of the parents in the process. Mm-hmm. And we have been talking now the teachers here, and the tool has been developed a lot for the teachers, and like beautifully, I really like the Frederick to say when they said that how this helps the little kids, even the little kids, to understand the lesson plans and others. But what I would find interesting is actually using this as some sort of a communicative tool between the teachers and the parents. So because the parents actually do not really have a clear idea what is done at school and how it progresses and how the homework for the kids is connected to the curriculum aims. So this not only would give a possibility for the teachers and the kids to interact, but also giving these making the school visible for parents also, which is extremely important in a situation where the kids are forced to have a distance education.
Yeah, if I can, I completely agree with you. And Well, the little things that I could that I did during this lockdown, actually in Italy are 13 weeks that we are not in our classroom, right? I was using this app before with my class. So my kids now are age 8 years old, right? So we used the app using the whiteboard in class. When we started the lockdown, I could allow the families to get into the app and to have a look at what I was planning for the kids day by day. I could leave messages for the kids that at this age can read by themselves. But the parents discover the backwards of the card, the one that was presented before, in which I was able to show them all the competencies, all the focus, the goals, what was my thought about that piece of, learning time. And I think that this helped them also to understand a little bit better what the kids were talking when they were back home, or what they were looking, on the web, just thinking, this crazy teacher is telling you to cook a cake. Why is she telling you that? And they could understand, just switching the card on the other side, that I was doing that because I was just presenting to the kids, grams and kilograms and stuff like that. And I wanted them to have a real experience. So I completely agree with you. We can also show to the parents and let them, have a different kind of look on our job, which is really great in my opinion, but this one is my opinion.
Thank you very much, Federica. Thank you, Pekka. I would like to close our workshop with an idea from Diana that told us in the chat that would like to present her ideas of how we should move forward. So please, Diana, we are looking forward to hear your idea.
Well, I was just so fascinated by all three of those presentations, and indeed by the conversation that's followed. And I also, by the way, just want to thank everybody for speaking English, because I do recognize how fortunate I am that you all do this so brilliantly. But the thread that I wanted to pick up began with, I think, what Lorella and Pier Giuseppe were saying about how the macro does not generate the micro. And this is why we need to focus to help teachers in that process of trying to work to the macro, but nonetheless, given that it doesn't really work in reality. And I think that I was especially pleased, for example, that Enilda picked up the fact that at the macro level, the app does seem to facilitate collaboration and openness and transparency. That's very important, but it still can't help teachers affect the macro level. Teachers have to live with what it is. But she also said that at the micro level, it is increasing both efficiency and engagement. And those things are very important. If we can make the learners feel some greater sense of ownership and engagement, that would be wonderful. And then Pekka seized on that point about the misalignment of the macro and the micro, and pointing out how diversity increases year by year, especially I think he was showing data for mathematics, Pekka, I suspect, where it is particularly difficult. But nonetheless, it is the case that the more time goes on, the greater diversity there is in the classroom, and that will be in many different other subjects as well. And so that, I think, is an endorsement of why we need this app, precisely because it enables the teachers to think about diversity and adaptation to the individuals and to plan for that. And it's sort of explicit about the fact that that is part of the teacher's responsibility. But then he goes on to this very interesting idea that the app should therefore be collecting the data about how each student responds to what the teacher is developing, and how the app could eventually become adaptive to them through some automated process. And his question, is that futuristic? My answer to that would be is yes, it is too futuristic at present. So I don't feel that that's the way forward. What you said, Pekka, was that the teachers need to be giving feedback. Your point about feedback was that there needs to be feedback to the system, to the macro system, that there is this misalignment. And what teachers are able to do with this kind of app is precisely to figure out how on earth we adapt to this in the classroom, in my everyday classroom with these different groups of children that I have to help. The app does something to help that process. So the data, the feedback to the system is what the teachers are doing. The teachers themselves are being adaptive. They are developing the designs and the resources and the lesson plans and so on that enable them to help the learners adapt to the system. So the data, the feedback to the system is what the teachers are actually doing. And so for that reason, I think we're a long way yet from understanding how to enable the app itself to be adaptive. We have to get a lot more information, which the teachers are able to collect because they now have much better control of the microsystem. They can build into their design the kinds of tests and feedback from students and so on, which enables them to see how well their plan is working. So if we could see it as a kind of iterative process, and that's where I think it was so interesting what Maria was saying about aggregation, because that will be eventually an aggregation of knowledge about what works and what doesn't work, and being able to understand the patterns. And if we do generate, 300 million data points, we'll know something about what they mean. At the moment, we don't. I mean, the world of education is generating billions of data points all over the place, but they're unusable because, they're not theory-driven collection of data, and we don't know how to analyze them, or we haven't got anything like the research capacity to. But if we can think of that aggregation of teacher knowledge, which they're being supported in developing, that begins to become feedback to the system, and maybe ultimately the system will change. I think that's a big unlikelihood, actually. I think it's very, very difficult for systems to change, but at least the teaching profession can own that and take responsibility for it. So I want to postpone your future a little bit, Pekka, and say, let's focus on how the teachers are adapting and capture that knowledge first.
Well, thank you very much, Diana. Thank you for your collection of ideas from our three discussants and for your closing thoughts. I don't know if there are other questions or people asking to interview, but I know that we are slightly out of time, and I think that we can close here our workshop. Thanking.
Sorry, Lorella, for interrupting you. May I ask you to fill in this feedback form? I just typed the address. It's a Google form, so if you can, you don't have to do it right now, but just even afterwards, or when you have time, but it would be very helpful for us.
Thank you, Roberto. I forget the questionnaire, so it's very important for us also to collect your opinion about this meeting. And I see that Loretta Fabri is with us. If you want to pose questions or suggest your idea, Loretta, thank you very much. Otherwise, we thank you for being here. And I also would like to really thank everybody, but especially our speakers, and Enilda, Maria, and Pekka, Diana, who helped us to conduct this webinar. And from me and Professor Rossi and all the staff of the project, thank you very much for being with us and for helping us to rethink and to bring forward the ideas of the project.
Thank you very much. It was very
Thank you,
inspiring.
Lorella, for
Thank you
facilitating
very
the
much.
workshop.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, thank you very much.
Not everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bravo.
Grazie e arrivederci.
Grazie.
Thank you, bye.
Arrivederci, grazie.
Grazie a
Bye.
tutti.
Grazie.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thanks.
Hai
Bye
iniziato in
bye.
italiano e finito in inglese, in italiano.
Sí, sí.
Ciao, bye.
En español es para finalizar.
Ok. Grazie Edoardo.
Gracias.
Grazie. Buona serata.
Buona serata a tutti.
Ciao.
Arrivederci
serata.
al prossimo progetto. Ciao.
Ciao.
Scusate, non mi funziona più la cam, però ci sono sempre. Grazie ancora.
C'è una
Grazie.
bellissima foto tua, per cui va bene lo stesso.
Ma hai visto che...
Grazie Roberto.
Grazie Lorella, tutto molto bene. Grazie Maila per avermi segnalato questa cosa, ho già corretto.
Ok, perfetto. Grazie Roberto.
Basta. L'attore non protagonista.
Ecco.
Sì, è passato più volte.
Lo so,
Abbiamo visto.
purtroppo non riesco a convincerlo.
Comunque Lorella è sempre meglio così, perché ieri ho avuto un webinar e ci ho avuto la mia gatta